Many a times you see the so-called mainstream Muslims telling you, Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. They will keep saying, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad, whatever rubbish. That is not from God. That is shirka. If you are doing it, refrain. I'm going to show you the evidence. Now, when we say salat, it has to do with God only. We don't do salat for anybody except God. Even the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam himself, his salat was dedicated to God. I will show you the evidence. According to chapter 6, verse 162, he says, Kul inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alamin. Indeed, my salat, my religious right, my life and my death are for God, the Lord of the worlds. This is what Muhammad himself said. So I don't know why you people are dedicating your salat to other than God. Now, chapter 33, verse 56. Many a times you hear people telling you when the prophet's name is mentioned, you should say sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's a lie. That is not from the Quran. That is the number one. Number two, they will tell you that because when you do this, the prophet will intervene for you on the day of judgment. That is another lie. Lie number two. According to the Quran, chapter 6, verse 51 to 52, nobody can intercede for you. Neither will Muhammad intercede for you. Neither will he be asked about you. He doesn't know you. He's on his own, you are on your own. Chapter 6, verse 51 to 52. Go and check it, of the Quran. Now, apart from that, they will tell you that when you are praying in your salat, you should do salat ala nabi. That is, in the salat, they pray to God. After praying to God, they start worshiping the prophet, praying to the prophet, talking to the prophet. But most people don't know Arabic, so they don't know what they are saying. It is just like God telling you in chapter 4, verse 43. This is what God says. God says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, la taqrabu salata wa antum sukara hatta ta'lamu ma taqulun. O you who believe, do not approach the salat while you are intoxicated until you know what you are saying. Which means the essence of knowing what you are saying in your salat is very, very relevant. You can never come and stand in front of your boss and you are talking, you have no idea what you are talking about. You need a serious slap. Wallahi lazim. A big time slap. You've been praying all your years for 50 years, doing salat five times a day. I don't know who gave you 5 times. But you are doing it 5 times a day. And you are reciting Arabic language in your salat and you have no idea what you are telling God. Afala ta'qilun. Are you okay? After God telling you in chapter 17, verse 36, وَلَا تَخَفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ. Do not pursue that of which you have no knowledge. إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. God gave you all these organs and you are misusing it. You deserve a dirty slap. So I'm going to show you the evidence. Now, so these people will tell you that the evidence, all the evidence is based in chapter 33, verse 56. Are you serious? So, okay, let's find that out. Is it true? Let's check. Chapter 33, verse 56. So now they will say, Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuhal lazina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. They will quote this verse for you and they will say this is where it says you should do salati upon the prophet, or you should, whenever his name is mentioned, you should say sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, or when you are praying in your salat, you should do salati upon him. Really? Is that what God said? Or you refuse to use your reasoning and study his book? Did he actually say this to you? After God telling you in chapter 3, verse 79, this is what God says concerning any prophet. ما كان لبشر أن يؤتيه الله الكتاب والحكمة والنبوة ثم يقول للناس كونوا عبادا لي من دون الله ولكن كونوا ربانيين بما كنتم تعلمون الكتاب وبما كنتم تدرسون. He says, it is not for a man that God should give him the book, al-kitab, and the hukmah, the judgment, and nubuwatan, the prophethood. ثُمَّ يَقُولُ لِلنَّاسِ. Then he will say to the people, كُونُوا عِبَادًا لِي, be my servants, مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ, besides God. وَلَكِنْ كُونُوا رَبَّانِيِّينَ, but instead be spiritual leaders, become spiritual leaders. بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تُعَلِّمُونَ الْكِتَابِ, by what you have been taught of the book. وَبِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَدْرُسُونَ, by what you have studied. Become spiritual leaders through what you have been taught of the book and through what you have studied from the book. Nowhere will a prophet come and tell you, come and sit down and say salati upon me. If you believe what the scholars tell you, it means you are a fool because you don't verify. You need to verify. Now, so let's see the evidence. Chapter 33 verse 56 doesn't say when the prophet's name is mentioned, you should say sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Come and prove to me. Open the verse. Any scholar listening to me, open the verse and prove to me where it says if his name is mentioned, I should say sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's not there. Apart from that, the Quran A to Z, there is no single verse where it says Muhammad will do intercession for you on the day of judgment, or more or less to talk about doing salati upon him and God will put you to paradise. That's a lie, another talk. Then apart from that, if you ask them, what are you doing the salat for? What does it mean? Salli ala Muhammad. What does it mean? He says, I'm asking for blessings upon the prophet. Are you in your right senses? You and the prophet, who deserve to ask, who is supposed to ask for blessings for the other? You are asking for God to bless. So God didn't know he would bless the prophet. You, the foolish human being who come and sit down and then invoke blessings for the prophet. Really? Really? Now, somebody might say, oh, why is this guy being offensive, using harsh words? Because maybe I'm using words which is stronger than you. Now, chapter 25, verse 44. Am tasabu anna aktharahum yasma'una aw ya'kilun inhum illa kal an'am bal hum adallu sabila. God is saying, do you think that most of them listen or reason? God says, they are just like livestock, animals. I'm not saying it, Quran is telling you. Then God says they are more astray from the way. Yes. If I call you foolish, you deserve it. Because you don't use your reasoning. Let's continue. Chapter 33, verse 56. They are saying that when you do salati upon the prophet, it means God is sending blessings. So let's understand the verse. Does it say you should send blessings? Okay, God says, Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. The right explanation of the verse is what I'm going to give you. God says, indeed, God and his angels reach out to the prophet. Yusalluna ala nabi. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, oh you who believe, reach out to him. Sallu alayhi. Wasallimu tasliman. And submit with submission, because Islam has to do with taslim. Submit to God. So God chose a prophet to give you the judgment. That is at the time of the previous believers. Because prophet is no more alive. And God never sent us a prophet. He sent the Arabs a prophet. And he is dead and gone. What God sent us is a messenger. Chapter 7 verse 158. Ya ayyuhal nas inni rasulullahi ilaykum jami'an. He didn't say inni nabiyillah ilaykum jami'an. There is a difference between a prophet and a messenger. Good. So now, the scholars will quote this verse and tell you this is what God says you should do the salati upon the prophet. Is that so? That is a lie. That is never from God, and they are lying to you day in and day out. So let's understand the verse. So, indeed, inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. God and his angels, they reach out to the prophet. How do they reach out to the prophet? Let's see the evidence. I take you to chapter 4, verse 166. God says, Lakin Allahu yashhadu bima anzala ilayka. He's talking to Muhammad alayhi salam, the prophet. Anzalahu bi ilmihi wal malaikatu yashhaduna. Then he says, Wakafa billahi shahida. But God bears witness to what he has revealed to you, Muhammad. He revealed it with his knowledge, and so do the angels bear witness. But sufficient is God as a witness. According to chapter 2, verse 97, Ruhul Qudus, that is, Angel Gabriel brought the Quran to Muhammad. According to chapter 16, verse 102, the Ruhul Qudus, he brought the Quran to Muhammad. So the angels, they bear witness that God brought the Quran. This is how God communicates to the prophet, to God and his angels, because God deals with the angels and the angels communicate with the prophet as well. So they reach out to the prophet. That is why he's called a prophet. Now, to understand the concept of the verse itself, he says, oh, you who believe, reach out to him. Sallu alayhi. How do we reach out to him? This is what you need to ask God so that God will explain to you. Don't go and ask the ulama. They are liars. They are liars, especially if they belong to any sector. They are lying to you. Don't ask them. They will lie to you, ladies and gentlemen. So, all you who believe, reach out to him. How do you reach out to him? Not us. For us, he is dead. He's no more in our current generation. When he was alive, he had believers around him. Go to chapter 9, verse 117 of the Quran, Surah At-Tawbah. When he was alive, there were believers with him, Muajirina and whatever, all the Tabi'in, they were with him, right? Now, he's dead and gone. This verse is not referring to the present day believers. It's referring to the previous believers at his time. So he says, oh, you believe, reach out to him. How do you reach out to the prophet? Now, first of all, you should understand how God is reaching out to the prophet first, before you can reach out to him. So I take you to chapter 33, verse 43, to see a similar thing God is doing for the believers, not only the prophet. The scholars will not tell you. The same thing God is doing to the prophet, he is doing to the believers, but through the prophet. So let's see. Chapter 33, verse 43. هو الذي يصلي عليكم وملائكته ليخرجكم من الظلمات إلى النور وكان بالمؤمنين رحيما. He, God, is the one who reaches out to you, the believers, together with his angels, in order to bring you out of darknesses into the light. And he is merciful to the believers. So you can see, this same thing God says he is doing to the prophet, هو الذي يصلي عليكم. He is the same one who he says, إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يصلون على النبي. He is doing the same to the believers too. Now, whatever God is doing to you, لِيُخْرِجَكُمْ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. He is doing that to bring you out of the darknesses into the light. So are you telling me about blessings? What blessings? Rubbish you are telling me. So God is sending blessings. Then the blessings do what? Just send blessings. And God now will tell you, the believers, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu sallu alayhi. You should also send blessings. So God didn't know he would bless him. Unless God tells you to bless the prophet before God will bless him, are you in your right senses? Or you fail to reason? So now God knows he will bless the prophet and he will wait for you, the mushrik, to invoke blessings before God blessed Muhammad. Afala ta'qilun. Now, he is the one who reaches out to you, the believers, to bring you out of the darknesses into the light. That is together with his angels. How does God do this? To bring us out of the darkness into the light. How will God do it? Is it by blessing, or do we have to follow his verses? Is he communicating with us, or how? Let's check. The evidence is sound and clear. So you go to chapter 57, verse 9. Surah Al-Hadid, chapter 57, verse 9. Let me check my time. Yeah. Chapter 57, verse 9. هو الذي ينزل على عبده آيات بينات ليخرجكم من الظلمات إلى النور وإن الله بكم لرؤوف رحيم. He, God, is the one who reveals to his servants verses as proofs in order to bring you out of darknesses into the light. And indeed, God is to you kind and merciful. So now God has chosen a prophet. The prophet is the one receiving revelation from God. Verses as proofs from God. In order to bring you, the believers, out of the darknesses into the light. So God is now telling you in chapter 33, verse 43, هو الذي يصلي عليكم وملائكته ليخرجكم من الظلمات إلى النور. This is what God does. So that he communicates, he reaches out to you, the believers. Through who? Through his servant. With what? Verses as proofs. So when he guides you, you come out of the darknesses into the light. So it is further explained in chapter 14, verse 1. Let's see. Suratul what? Ibrahim. Verse 1. This is what God says. Then God says, Alif Lam Ra Kitabun Anzalnahu Ilayka, you Muhammad, لتخرج الناس من الظلمات إلى النور بإذن ربهم إلى صراط عزيز حميد. A book which we have revealed to you, Muhammad, in order to bring the people out of darknesses into the light by the permission of their Lord, to the path of the Almighty, the praiseworthy. This is what you need, God is doing to you, the believers. He brought verses through the prophets. That's how God and the angels, they reach out to the prophet. So now he is telling you, the believers, reach out to him, because you can reach out to him by getting the verses. So go and communicate with the prophets. Go to the prophets and listen to the words of God. This is what it says in chapter 47, Surah to Muhammad, verse 20, when the believers, they ask, when is the chapter going to be revealed? Because they know God is communicating with them through the prophet. Now, so when God is saying, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu tasliman, it is not talking about you saying blessings. Then you tell God what rubbish. Then you are now telling God. God already told you. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. God says already he and his angels are doing that for the prophet. Communicating with the prophet. Now God is telling you, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu sallu alayhi. And now you come in front of God. You are now telling God, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Again, are you in your right senses? God already says, Inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. You are now telling God again to do the same thing he's already doing to the prophet. What special thing are you doing to telling God to do? What? To bless the prophet? Oh, so he didn't know he would bless him already after giving him a blessed book, making him a prophet. Now, then he says, "Wasallimu tasliman," and submit with submission. It doesn't say you should say salam upon the prophet. Sallimu tasliman, it doesn't say you should say salam to the prophet. You submit with submission. When you reach out to the prophet, he will tell you the verses of God. He will tell you this is what God says. So for instance, chapter 4 verse 65, this is what he's saying. Chapter 4 verse 65, فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِي مَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. But no, by your Lord, they do not believe until they make you, Muhammad, judge in whatever they dispute among themselves. That is, they reach out to him, they come to him, then he will tell them what God says. And should find no difficulty within themselves from what you have decided, and to submit with what? Submission. That is, you are submitting to God. Because according to chapter 4, verse 105, God says he should use the Quran to judge them. According to chapter 5, verse 49, God says he should use the Quran to judge them. So let's see the evidence. Chapter 5, verse 49. This is what God says. What book Muhammad should use to judge the people. He says, وَأَنْ يُحْكُمُوا بَيْنَهُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَاءَهُمْ وَآزَرُوهُمْ أَنْ يَفْتِنُوكَ عَنْ بَعْدِ مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ فَإِنْ تَوَلَّوْا فَأَعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَنْ يُصِيبَهُمْ بِبَعْدِ ذُنُوبِهِمْ وَإِنَّ كَثِيرًا مِنَ النَّاسِ لَفَاسِقُونَ. And so judge between them by what God has revealed, and do not follow their inclinations, and beware of them, lest they tempt you away from some of what God has revealed to you, Muhammad. And if they turn away, then know that God only intends to afflict them for some of their sins. And indeed, many of the people are immoral. You can see, it is not talking about you invoking blessings for the prophet. It is a lie. Now, let's move on. Now, so when you go to chapter 9, verse 103, Muhammad himself was asked to what? Reach out to the believers. It is not talking about invoking blessings. Allahumma salli. No. Chapter 9, verse 103. When you go to Surah At-Tawbah, it says, "Khuz min amwalihim sadaqat tutahhiruhum wa tuzakkihum biha wa salli alayhim inna salataka sakanu lahum wallahu samiun alim." It says, take from their wealth, that is charity, sadaqah, to purify them and to what? Vindicate them, and then reach out to them. Because the believers need somebody to communicate with them. Then God says, indeed, your communication, that is the act of reaching out to them, sakanulahum, brings tranquility with them. So it's like communicating with somebody who is more enlightened than you, who is more guided, and he's advising you on certain aspects of life. How do you feel? You have the tranquil, because he will give you solutions to your problems. Similarly, this is what God says. Wallahu Sami'un, and God is Sami'un, listening, hearing, and what? Omniscient. Now, so we can see chapter 9, verse 103, the prophet was asked to do the same thing to the believers, reach out to them. The believers should also reach out to him, and God is reaching out to him. So this is how it goes. When God and his angels reach out to the prophet through communication by verses, then the prophet is supposed to reach out to the believers, and the believers are also to reach out to him, act of communicating. That is yusalli alaykum. That is inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. It doesn't mean you should invoke blessings. Blessings in Arabic means baraka. Barakna, to bless us or to bless somebody. Barakahu. It never means salli. Good. The word salli ala can be found in the Quran 4 times. Salli ala. It is a tasrif. It's in a conjugational form, which has been mentioned in the Quran. In Arabic, we say tasrif. It can be found in chapter 33, verse 56, chapter 33, verse 43, chapter 9, verse 103, and chapter 9, verse 84. It has nothing to do with salat, and it has nothing to do with invoking blessings. Listen carefully. Now, when you take the name of Prophet Muhammad in the Quran, it has been mentioned 4 times only in the Quran. Nowhere in the Quran did God ever mention Muhammad's name and say Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It's not there. Nowhere did God ever told Muhammad that when you mention your name Muhammad, add Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam there. It's not from God. It is shirka. Listen and study. Now, so Muhammad's name can be found in chapter 33, verse 40, chapter 48, verse 29, chapter 3, verse 144, and chapter 47, verse 2. You will find his name there. Remember, chapter 41, verse 42 says, La yatil batil min bayni yadayhi wala min khalfi. No falsehood can enter into the Quran from the front and the back. So don't let them keep lying to you, writing Muhammad's name and writing Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It's not from God. It is idol worship.